Welcome to Sassy AF TV and the Sassy AF audio experience, Season 3, Episode 4, Weird is the New Sexy. Being a badass means not giving up and owning your shit. That's what this week's guest, Erin Berry, is all about. Erin is one of the most badass and sassy women I know. She is a transformational relationship coach, energy healer, retreat leader, and yoga instructor. Erin talks about the importance of following your North Star and letting that guide your pursuit of bliss in life. She also shares how she has gone through a lot of emotional trauma in her life, but that pain is what has allowed her to blossom and grow. Erin says we have to pay attention to the words we say to ourselves when no one is around and keep choosing ourselves over and over again. If you really want to embrace your weird and be authentic, listen up to this super fun episode. Welcome back to another episode of Sassy AF TV and the Sassy AF audio experience. I'm Hallie Avolio, and I'm really thrilled to bring you our special guest today. She is so fun. She is a badass. Her name is Erin Berry, and Erin is a transformational relationship coach, a healer, and a retreat leader. She does all the things, hence in-demand woman. Amazing. Erin, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. You are amazing, badass, so fun. And I love how we, connected online and we got to get to know each other not too long ago and had so many similar paths and experiences. And tell us who you are and more about your story.
Yeah. So, I think that the Sassy AF thing is really what attracted me to you, because I do consider myself a badass and a spiritual gangster. And it's definitely been a journey. I started, 20 years ago on my self-love journey, but my world exploded about 4 years ago. And that's really when I stepped into my authenticity and self-love, and then realized through my process that I really needed to teach it to other people. So that's how I ended up where I am today.
That's awesome. Yeah. Sometimes we need those, need that linchpin in our life that really kind of sets us on fire and helps us get going for what our real passion and purpose is.
Yeah, it was a catalyst. Everything has been a catalyst. And I know that it's just been one divine journey, no matter what the pain was or the trials. It's brought me to this moment right here. And now I can share it with other people. So that's been really the fun full circle moment.
Isn't that so cool? I've recently been spending a lot of time on meditation and manifestation and really just thinking about the messages of the universe, the signs. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day. And if you had asked me about any of these topics 6-7 years ago, I would have called bullshit on all of it and said, no way. But as I've leaned in and surrendered and really just embraced this side of the world, it's so, in my opinion, it was so arrogant of me to believe previously that there's only one way to think. And clearly there's so many things that happen that go on in our world, in our universe, in our existence, that to think that we're only, as one being, that we are the center, that's just, now I look at it as, gosh, how could I have thought that way previously? But again, divine path, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, everybody gets to their journey, how they get to their journey. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like magic's everywhere if you know where to look for it. And I know you posted something the other day about numbers, and I was thinking about you today because I see signs all the time. I see those repetitive numbers, or I was just in Taos over the weekend and just looking up at the expanse of the sky. How can you possibly think you are the center of the universe?
Right.
You're a speck on a speck on a speck on a speck.
Oh my gosh. Yes. The tiniest.
Yeah.
But collectively, we all bring it together. And that to me is where a lot of the magic comes in, is that collective energy and that collective power. And when we can come together and find like-minded people or experiences and the synchronicities that happen, that to me is, that's really sassy, really badass, really fun. You're like, whoa, it's this is how I'm meant to be seeing the world.
Yeah. It's finding your tribe. My mission in life is to bring together a bunch of like-minded people and raise the vibration and heal the world. That's really ultimately my biggest goal. And so, yeah, it is remembering that we are all connected, that we're all divine. And this is just, we're unique expressions of that, but we can never be alone. I think is a really good thing to remember.
Absolutely. Well, and I love in your messaging, you talk a lot about bliss. And I love the word bliss. We don't hear it very often. Every time I hear it, I think of you now, Erin. It's like, if I think about bliss, I think about Erin. And I think it's a beautiful word. And I love how you say that it is our birthright, but you also couple it so energetically with the word badass. So tell me a little bit about that. What is your, definition of badass, and how did you come to that mission and to that mindset?
I think I just kind of fell into it. I think I realized that what I was doing was pretty badass. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart to do, the work of transformation and awakening. And I kept receiving these messages as I had my life kind of explode and fall apart, that I was meeting it with grace. Mm-hmm. And that I've just really had this way of being in trust and faith with whatever was going to happen, no matter what it was. And that I'm being supported, and that I understand that as long as I was just talking about this on something else, but having a North Star, and once you know what your North Star is, like that, keeping your mission in that way, and that gives you a lot of strength. So I think for me, being a badass means like not giving up, like no matter what knocks you down, like not giving up. But also there's this piece of it where you own yourself. So it's really easy to go through life and just point fingers and blame other people and project your happiness onto other people. I've done all of this, by the way. This is how I know, it's been, I had to learn it so I could teach it.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I call it owning your shit. And that's really what it is. Like looking at like where you're still struggling, what your patterns are, what your conditioning is. And you didn't have any control over how you got those things, but you do have control over what you choose to do about them. And so I think it takes a major badass to be like, I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of living in my pain, and I'm ready to be the badass that I came here to be and to claim the bliss that is my birthright. I get a little passionate talking about it.
I love that. And okay, right now I'm having a moment of complete connection. You don't even know this, but before we got on our call about 2 hours ago, I wrote an Instagram post that will go out on Facebook as well, and all the places, because that's how I do things. And literally the opening word is, I used to feel like I didn't own my shit. And it's all about...
Of course we're talking today.
Of course we're talking today. And it's all about how I didn't feel like I was owning my shit. And once I made the conscious decision and choice to do so and stop being a victim, then everything starts falling into alignment. I mean, hello, right there.
Yeah. There's a difference between, I used to be in a lot of unconscious pain. And I posted something the other day that I saw, it was a meme. It's like, real transformation happens when you get sick and tired of your own shit. Mm-hmm. That's exactly like what I experienced. And even though I have been through so much growth and transformation, and it is uncomfortable, it's like pain with a purpose. Some midwife told me that when I was pregnant with my daughter. And I was like, this is also pain with a purpose. And I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't go back to not understanding what I understand now, because at least there's a conscious choice, where before it just felt like I was being kind of pushed around by whatever was happening in the world around me.
Right. Well, and the other thing, I'd love to talk about from a transformation perspective. I think that sometimes we get this idea, at least I used to have this mindset, that transformation meant you go from point A to point B and that's the end. But as I've been in my journey, and I'm sure you've experienced this too yourself and with clients, transformation is all the time. So just because you've evolved, and just because you feel, okay, I've raised my vibrations, I'm taking care of myself, I'm practicing self-love, it's still going on. And there's still sometimes that unconscious pain, right? And then you have to dig deeper and make it conscious and then work through it. So for me, transformation is really understanding the journey, and that it is never ending. It's all over the place. It's just knowing that you can deal with it and having the confidence to understand that when things get uncomfortable and painful, that you have the tools to be able to dig it up, process it, deal with it, and take action to move forward.
Yeah. I feel like it's like a spiral. I've heard an onion, like you peel the layers, but I like the same thing. That idea of a spiral, like things circle back around. You get to keep looking at them over and over and over again.
Yes.
But every time you do, you get to respond instead of react. You get to step back and see it faster. And I've gotten really tricky. I've said this to a few of my clients. I went from feeling like I was a toddler that was like kind of kicking and screaming and throwing a tantrum in my patterns and conditioning to now I'm like the sneaky teenager. Like it takes me a little bit longer to catch myself in the same patterns because I like to trick myself. And then that's my work to go even deeper. And yeah, I mean, no matter how much work I've done, I'm aware that there's always going to be more. And this idea of work came up for me recently because people have an association to the word work. And so it makes it seem like it's not a good thing. But I feel like I just want to say this is the work that I'm honored to do because I know this is what I came here to do.
Right. Well, I think a lot of that has to do with this cultural dynamic where we have this aversion to pain or discomfort, right?
Yeah.
But truly, in the pain and the discomfort is where the growth happens. And that to me is where the magic is. So yeah, it sucks. It's shitty to feel uncomfortable and pain. But at the same time, if you don't have enough pain, then you're never going to make a change. So if you go through life in this kind of like medium space where you're just like, yeah, it's fine. Well, then what's going to push you forward? So I was actually talking to my mom about that last night. And I was saying, sometimes you have to really like get deep into that pain where you're so uncomfortable that you're finally like ready to start going back into that spiral.
Yeah. And it's through is the only way you can get through that. I've been sitting in some of that myself. I think just energetically, there's so much going on right now and what's going on in our world. And it's palpable. And yeah, you can't avoid it. If you avoid it, it's like hiding a piece of yourself or hiding a piece of something that you need to clear. And yeah, it's like, okay, straight through, which is another badass quality, because it sucks sometimes.
Right.
But it's purpose.
Right. Yeah. I love what you said earlier that you've been on your self-love journey for like 20 years. And I'm curious, I feel like 20 years ago, if you had said self-love, I would have been like, huh, what are you I don't even know what that means. Like, what is that word? So how did that kind of start? I mean, to me, that seems, I think of it as more of a newer concept, although I know it's been around for a long time. It's not new. It's just something that I hadn't articulated in the way that I articulate it now. But how did that really start for you?
So I started my spiritual growth journey by getting in my car and driving to Sedona and having a soul retrieval. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just got to enough pain that there was a friend that had just done this retreat there that I was like, I need whatever that is. And it was that retreat leader who asked me if I loved myself. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I was like, of course I love myself. I so did not love myself. I hated myself. I have had eating disorders. I married a guy who hated me more than I hated myself. And our agreement was to talk smack about me. And so that opened the floodgates for me around self-love. Like, I don't know. It was just this journey of like catching myself. Around that time, I read like a book that talked about meditation and it talked about catching your unconscious thoughts. And I started to really catch my thoughts around what I really thought about myself and seeing how painful and not loving and kind they were. And it was probably like, and it still is a journey. It's just taken a different like evolution, but it's really been about really honoring myself, seeing my worth, speaking my truth. And eventually it ended my marriage because what I realized is I started to stand up for this awesome badass, and my ex didn't like it because that was not our initial agreement. So I think that self-love can be super tricky. I think that we think we might love ourselves. We might say it out loud, but there's no like energy behind it. And it's really starting to look at like what you say about yourself when no one's around, what you're saying about yourself on a loop in your head that maybe you don't even know that you're saying, and starting to bring that into conscious awareness. And then once you see all of that, it's then working it, from a more external standpoint, really consciously owning who you are and really loving who you are and choosing yourself over and over again. At least this has been my experience.
So when you work with women that you're helping them discover this self-love space, what are some of the tactical ways that you have them start? Because this can be really challenging, especially if someone doesn't have the language. Like I didn't have the language several years ago. So if you had said to me, do you love yourself? I don't know that I would have even been able to properly answer the question. So how do we begin to examine our self-love?
I think one of the most powerful tools is like a stream of consciousness journal. where you just let your mind go and you just really start to like write down like a brain dump, and then go back and read it. And if you do it often enough, you'll start to catch the words and the patterns and the sentences over and over. For me, I kind of did it. I just started listening. I started like when I was in a quiet space. I'll never forget one day, like right after I got back from Sedona, I took a shower and I was in the shower, like, okay, mind, stop, God. Like I started to realize just how much like my mind ran. I was talking to a client about this earlier today. It's a tool. Our mind is a tool, but we've like allowed it to operate who we are. Mm-hmm. And so it's like reclaiming who we are from a cellular level and like making that the tool again. But it really was just like really becoming present with my thoughts and really starting to see how many of them were harmful. And then really asking myself if that was my truth. Because for me, I feel like along the way, I was told things that I decided to believe. And I think that's where our self-love journey starts, because we start to not love ourselves because of things we've been told, either, in our upbringing or by society or just life in general.
Right. Well, and then there's, these ancestral stories that we carry down with us from, our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, all the way back, our ancestors. Right. And we carry some of these stories deep within us, especially as women, we carry them in our womb space. Right. And so, that coupled with these stories that we hear as we're growing up, whether it's a teacher, a friend, a parent, a coach, whomever. Right. And then we have to decide, do we believe these stories? Are they our truth? Or are they something that somebody else has told us and we need to change that narrative?
Yeah. And it sits on so many different levels. It's not just mental. Right. I have a lot that sits in my body, is where I like feel it on a cellular level, or like you're saying, energetic. Like we're at a time in our history right now where a lot of people are clearing that ancestral junk for all of time. And so it's really exciting and painful at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if we listen, right, if we're open, if we're receptive to hearing what is happening in those stories and how we can make positive change for ourselves and for the world around us, then we feel the shift. But what about somebody who really is feeling those blockages? Aside from doing this stream of consciousness journaling, but there could be somebody out there who says, gosh, that sounds awesome, but I have this pen and paper and nothing happens.
Yeah.
How do we start to maybe embody it so that we can break it down and really start feeling into who we are?
I think you just nailed it by saying, how do we embody it? I mean, you got to find the movement that starts to clear that, because it is literally through your body that you heal. Like that's the human experience. So for me right now, like breath work is like the bee's knees. I love that stuff. And it's feeling into the felt sensations in your body, or like if you feel like I have this sensation I get in the pit of my stomach, and I can sit with it and ask, like, what are you? And get curious, because I think we've been taught over and over again in our lives that we're supposed to just ignore that sensation, ignore the messages. On a deeper level, we're taught to like question ourselves and our intuition. And I know like this gut connection is intuition, And so it really is, it goes back to like a self-trust component. So yeah, you kind of have to hit it on all the levels. But I think, for me personally, part of my journey really started when I started practicing yoga. Because until that point in time, I think I probably just lived up here. I think I was just kind of tethered to this human vessel. I don't think that I was like actually in it. So for me personally, it's been yoga, dance. And that's like the kind of dance I've done with you on your little dance parties, where you just dance like nobody is watching.
No
like,
judgment.
What feels good in your body. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I love what you said about get curious. And I hear that, that's something that I keep hearing, and I'm paying attention, and I'm listening, because I used to not be curious at all. And in fact, I remember being a kid and I would go to the grocery store or something, and I lived in a small town. And so you would almost always run into somebody that you knew from school or whatever. And I remember my mom, saying, oh, go say hi to so-and-so and ask them how they're doing. And I would be like painfully shy, like, no, I can't go talk to them. And then if I did, I would just say like, hi. And that was it. And then a come back and my mom would say, oh, well, what did they say? How are they? I said, I don't know. She said, well, aren't you curious? Didn't you ask them about their day, their summer vacation, whatever the circumstance was? And I didn't tap into that side of me. And now I'm always curious and asking these questions. But again, I think that's something that we have to kind of unlearn, because I think that culturally and societally, we've put up these boundaries, like we can't get curious about ourselves or about other people because it's not okay to go there, to put someone in that position. But if you can do it in a gentle and loving way, curiosity, especially for yourself, is really powerful.
Yeah. And being open to the messages. So not getting in the like rabbit hole of the thought process, like, ooh, I have this, this sensation and now I'm curious about it. And, oh, this is probably linked to this like thing that happened to me in childhood. It's like, just what is it trying to tell me in this moment? Because most of the physical stuff we experienced started as emotion. And we ignored it and we shoved it down. I had stomach issues for years. So I'm like speaking from my own experience of this. It was my body like saying, listen, would you just listen already? I'm trying to talk to you. I'll keep being more and more obnoxious if you're not going to pay attention.
That is such a good point. It's like, don't just listen and then hear one thing and then go Google it and try to get all the pieces of information and talk to everybody about it and then overthink it.
Yeah, just be with it. And a lot of times you can clear that stuff without having to know what it is, which is really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
I know another area of passion for you is relationships, especially love relationships. And you talk about the healthy conscious connections. Can you share a little bit about that and how you work with women to get into those healthy relationships?
So it starts with our work with ourselves. We have to really know who we are. We really have to love ourselves in order to do that. I mean, I can speak from my previous experience of I thought I was just supposed to project my happiness onto somebody else. So a lot of it is our internal work to start. And then it's through communication and vulnerability has really been my experience, like being able to be open, which is really scary, but being able to show up authentically as you, because what I've seen a lot of people do is like hide parts of themselves. And then at a certain point, you can't keep that up, And I really just feel like all of us is welcome. And the people that we're supposed to be in relationship with will love and accept us for exactly who we are. But they can't really do that until we do it for ourselves. So it's a vicious cycle.
Right. And I think authenticity is one of those ones also it's hard. How do we start to connect to ourselves authentically so that we can show up authentically and communicate with other people in that way? Because we still have all this self-doubt, fear, comparison syndrome, imposter syndrome, whatever that you're dealing with, right? And so then it's like that little voice that says, wait, put the blocks on because I'm not sure that I want to be as vulnerable and as authentic as I should be.
I think it goes back to our core wounds, which are always around worthiness and not enoughness. Like that's what we're all dealing with. And yeah, it is scary. And I can't figure out which one comes first, the self-love or the authenticity. I think they go like hand in hand, but I think it goes back to getting curious about like who you really are. And I think the way you do that is by figuring out what lights you up. So it goes back to like listening to and trusting yourself. So if you're doing something and you're shoulding all over yourself around what you're doing because you're doing what you think you're supposed to do, it's probably not in alignment with your authenticity. And there is that fear. There's a lot of fear that I've experienced personally. And then I've seen my clients experience that's around, if I fully show up as me, people won't love and accept me. But here's the thing. When you love and accept yourself, you attract the people who will do the same. And so it's this attachment we have, at least for me, I know I did, around like it's a failure for relationships to come and go from our life. And what I've really learned and like honor and realize in the last few years is that they are here as teachers. And so they come and go from our lives and you don't know how much time you have. And there's this beautiful practice and just being really, I love the practice of unattachment, which is not the same as detachment. But it's where you actually like just be in this moment because you never know how long you have. So it goes back to like the present moment is literally all there is.
Yeah. And also aligning with yourself with people that fill you up and make you feel good, whether it's a friend relationship, a professional relationship, a love relationship. I think oftentimes we hold on to relationships that don't serve us.
Yeah.
Back to that concept of, oh, well, I should be friends with them, or I should have them in my life because of X, Y, or Z. And no, but you don't have to let anybody go with meanness. You can really release with love and just unattach in that way.
I just experienced a breakup, and I have so much gratitude in this moment because it was this beautiful experience and teacher, and something beautiful and new comes out of it. And it's through the practice in unattachment that I've been able to get to this place because I just have an understanding that what I'm doing in relationships and the kind of relationships I'm creating are not what I was taught,
Right. I don't know that everything we were taught is what it actually is meant to be. We have to do a lot of unlearning is what I'm experiencing. A lot of unlearning about how we relate to people and how we relate to ourselves and expectations. I had, this share the other day where I said, right now we're exactly where we're meant to be in this moment. In this moment, when we're recording this video, this is where we're meant to be. And when it comes out a few weeks from now, that's exactly where we're meant to be in that moment. And that's so cool. But if you're constantly trying to force yourself to be in a different moment or in a different mindset or a different headspace, then you can never just be in the present.
Yes. And then my experience of that as well. And I was just on a coaching call where we were talking about this, you have to honor where everyone else is too. And that can be a really frustrating thing in relationship. Everyone is in exactly the divine place that they're supposed to be. And that can be really hard. The more that you learn this stuff and understand it, you might want to force someone to get ahead of their journey, but they're doing it their way. And they're going through whatever it is that they need to go through to have the experiences they need to have so that they can learn and heal and clear that stuff for themselves.
So how do you teach people in relationship to have that compassion for their partner?
They really have to get back to where they started, is what I've discovered. They really have to understand that the person that they're with is separate from them and is different from them. I think a lot of times we are coming so much from our story and our experience, we forget that we're dealing with an individual who's had their own separate story and journey. So it's actually through seeing our differences and seeing that. I really feel like the more self-work I've done or the self-work I help my clients do, that cultivates that compassion. Mm-hmm. Because until you understand your own suffering, you can't be compassionate for somebody else's suffering. Mm-hmm. So it really is this work of self-forgiveness, self-compassion, which helps you go. If you're projecting onto the other person, if you're constantly trying to figure out how to fix them, you never will. I remember I went to this meditation retreat once where I had these huge awarenesses and ahas. And at the end I said, okay, but now that I know all this, how do I get my partner to change? And she just laughed at me because you can't. The work is always within yourself. All you can ever do is lead by example.
Right.
And someone can choose to be with you and to catch up with you, or they can go on their own journey, but it doesn't really affect your evolution and growth. You either grow together or you grow apart.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've been practicing lead by example since I was in high school. And I had a friend who said that in our youth group, and she always said, lead by example. And we would have that as our mantra of our group. And so that's been something that's been on my mind for decades. And it's so true, because if you can just focus your intention on what is important to you in this moment and the work that you have to do, then hopefully the partner that you're with, and if you're in alignment and intended to be together, then your paths will work accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. So finding that North Star and knowing what it is, knowing what you're committed to.
Right. I love that. All right. So back to a little more badass talk. I love you made a comment about weird is the new sexy. What does that mean? I love it. I want to know, how do we get weird, Erin? Because that sounds fun to me.
So when I was on my authenticity journey, I thought I had this, and I do. I have a huge freak flag. And I remember telling someone about it. I'm like, oh my God, I love crystals and I love like festivals and I love dancing and I love, all these weird things. And he's like, that's not your freak flag. That's like authentically you. But what I realized is that weird is wonderful. Like my kids say that to me too, which I like, they understand, they get it. I just think it's really boring to be kind of like in the box and to be what everyone says you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to look and how you're supposed to act. And so to me, weird is the new sexy is the same idea as weird is wonderful. It's like you just show up as yourself. It goes back to that badassery of owning yourself, right? Weird and all
of it. Well,
all of the things.
I agree. Cause I mean, as I said before, I used to try to like shove myself into how I looked, how I acted, the kind of work I did, all the things. Right. And when I did that, I just could like feel all the resistance. And then once I like let it go, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I can be super weird. And like, I'll like dance around my kitchen and make weird faces and voices. And my kids laugh at me and they're like, Mom, and they're totally rolling their eyes at me. But then they do weird stuff too. And it's great. I mean, how boring would life be if everybody just like kind of like followed suit and did some robotic sort of behavior all the time? I mean, I would be bored as fuck. So I say bring on the weird.
Right. Weird as fuck, not bored as fuck.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. That's cool. Well, this has been so fun, Erin. I'm so glad you were here and you could share the work that you do and your thoughts on all of this. I mean, self-love, finding your North Star, having that place of compassion and understanding how we can relate to one another better. I feel so passionate about this. I know you do too. And just stepping into your life as a badass and being weird as fuck, it's all good. So if you guys take away anything else from this interview, that's what I want you guys to remember. Step into your badass self and be weird as fuck. And
exactly.
Perfect. So where can everybody connect with you if they want to follow your journey and learn more about the work that you do?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. I've got a group, the Blissfully Aligned Badasses, and I'm out there as well, Erin Berry Bliss, and then I'm on Instagram as well under Berry Blissful Yoga.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to put all the links in the show notes so everybody can see that and follow you and learn from you. And I know you also have some videos that you were going to share with the group. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah, so during this time, I was just thinking about how everyone seems to be trying to survive instead of thrive. So it goes back to the hierarchy of needs. It's around love, safety, and belonging. And there's some tools and tips there on how to thrive instead of survive during pandemic and crazy times.
I love it. Awesome. We should all be thriving. Absolutely. All right.
It's our birthright.
It is our birthright. Bliss, thriving. Yes, yep. Absolutely. And my final question that we have to know is, what is something that makes you feel sassy?
Oh, goodness. I think owning my weirdness is like the sassiest thing I can do. I feel like when I show up fully authentically as me, which is just weird, it's just super sassy too.
I love it. Well, someday when we can all like be traveling and in person together again, I would love to like dance with you in real life, do a ceremony, go to a festival, something weird and fun, and just be crazy together. That would be awesome. So that's what I'm manifesting right now in this moment.
And so it is.
And so it is. Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Erin, for being here. I'm so glad that we have connected and you are here to share your beautiful story and teach us today, because so much wisdom came from this episode. So I'm just very grateful and sending you so much love and energy.
Thank you. It was really fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here and watching another episode of Sassy AF TV and the Sassy AF audio experience. I look forward to seeing you next week, and we'll see you then. Bye. I absolutely love Erin's approach to life, self-love, and just being yourself. It's so cool how in sync she and I are. Now that you have heard some of our favorite ways to embrace our weird, what ways are you showing up weird in your life? Thanks again for being here and tuning in for another episode of Sassy AF TV. It would mean the world to me if you would leave a comment and take a screenshot to share it with your tribe on Instagram or Facebook. Don't forget to tag me at Sassy Healthy Fit. Then make sure to head over to sassyhealthy.fit and sign up for our mailing list so you always know the latest and greatest in sassy fun. See you next time.